Good evening, Springfield. Welcome to the Township of Springfield's Planning Board meeting, September 12th, 2024. Adequate notice has been given in accordance with the Sunshine Laws. Notice was published on July 18th, 2024 in the local source, which is the official newspaper for the Township of Springfield for the year 2024. Also posted in the Annex Building on July 18th, 2024. Let's do a salute to the flag, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm pleased we have power before this meeting tonight. So let's do a roll call.
Committeeman Rich Huber.
Where's Alex?
Oh, present.
Committeeman Alex Kaiser. Mr. David Barnett.
Here.
Ms. Marissa Ruggiero. Mr. Aaron Laufer. Here. Mr. Richard Cedarquist. Here. Ms. Julie Tomeo. Here. Mr. Brian Cantagallo. Here. Mr. Scott Wishna. Vice Chair Sharon Kessel. And Chairman Tiger.
Yes.
We have.
Okay, so for the record, a couple housekeeping items before we start. So first, Sharon Kessel notified me via email and you, Jen, that she was traveling this week. So that would be considered an excused absence. I know Mr. Wishna as well. He had a family emergency, so that will be an excused absence as well. Marissa Ruggiero should be here sometime through the meeting, and we'll deal with it as it comes. So the record reflect that. Also, for the record, I'll let that go for the next until we get to the application. So let's do meeting minutes of June 2024, back in the beginning of the summer. Everyone have a chance to review those meeting minutes?
Yes.
Anyone have any questions, concerns? No. You good, Mr. Huber, with them?
Yep.
Okay, good. Can we have a
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the minutes of the June 2024 meeting.
second?
Second. Oh,
Aaron, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
yeah. I second it.
All in favor, anyone opposed? None? Seeing none, motion passes. Okay, we have a resolutions for the AT&T, I guess we'll do them separately. AT&T 200 Mountain Avenue, Block 1202, Lot 35 for a cell phone tower waiver. We had this before. It was a waiver. Our board engineer supported the waiver. Anyone questions and concerns?
Nope.
Can I have a motion to adopt the resolution?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, no, we got to do a roll call. Let's do a roll call, yeah.
Mr. Barnett.
Yes.
Ms. Tomeo. Yes. Committeeman Huber.
See?
Mr. Cedarquist. Yes. And Chairman Tiger.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, the other AT&T cell phone tower, 1 Cornell Parkway, Block 3903, Lot 16, cell phone tower waiver, supported by our board engineer. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Huber, you want to second it?
Sure.
Okay, he seconded it. We have a roll call.
Mr. Barnett.
Yes.
Committeeman Huber.
Yes.
Mr. Cedarquist. Yes. Ms. Tomeo. Yes. And Chair Tiger.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, first application before us tonight we're going to carry. It's Kenneth Gruskin, 10-2024S, 294 Morris Avenue, Block 206, Lot 3 for minor site plan variances, generator, wall sign, and awnings. Anyone from the public here for this application for Kenneth Gruskin will be carried till 6:30 on September 23rd, 2024 with no further notice. So that application, Kenneth Gruskin, will not be heard tonight. It's going to be carried till September 23rd, 2024, Monday in this room, September 23rd. And it will be the first thing on the agenda for anyone that's here. Seeing the next thing, PCR Store 17 LLC, which is Jersey Mike's, 8-2024S, Block 201 Route 22, Block 3702, Lot 2, preliminary and final site plan. This is a conditional use with a parking variance. No, there shouldn't be the parking variance. Jen, there's no parking variance, so let's strike that off. It's a conditional use that's coming before us. So for the record, subcommittee, before you get started, subcommittee met, reviewed this. Mr. Cantagallo, do you want to give some update on the subcommittee?
Yeah, sure.
But talk into the microphone, please.
Sure. Mike, I think, did extensive research on it. We had a discussion about it, and I don't think we had any significant concerns over Jersey Mike's at that location.
With the parking.
With the parking.
Mike, do you agree before they get started? This way we can...
I concur with that. We did on-site observations, parking on weekdays, weekends, and we also did multiple on-site observations at various Jersey Mike's on Route 10 and
You're not biased because it's Jersey Mike's and your first name's Mike? Not at all?
Not at all.
Okay, Counsel, do you want to start with a brief, I think you need a brief.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and board members and members of the public. Thank you for coming out this evening. And first of all, yes, this is in essence a change in tenancy. We appreciate it, and Brian, thank you for holding the site plan committee. And it's great having Mike Disco did a fantastic job doing the overview and investigation as to the adequacy of the parking. Obviously, Supercuts is vacated, it's vacant now, and it's great to see an entity like Jersey Mike's move into this location and take over vacant space. We reviewed Mike Disco's report, have no issues with that. Joe Steiger will touch on that, and also the other Mike Mistretta, have his report, again, no issues complying with that. I know there's a couple of cleanup items on the site. Mr. Steiger will address that, but we'll be very brief.
You're aware of the letter with some of the improvements?
Yep.
That's included.
Actually, Mike Disco just gave me an additional copy. So I'd like to briefly call upon Joe Steiger to take us through the site plan.
Brief.
Yes, again, it's just no changes to the site other than the cleanup items that Mr. Disco noted. And and what he's putting up is a mounted version of the site plan portion. We have the architect here with the floor plan, but it's a Jersey Mike's. All right, so Mr. Steiger will have you sworn and qualified.
Yes. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Can you please state your name for the record and spell your last name?
Yes, my name is Joseph Steiger, Staigar.
Okay. Mr. Steiger, could you just identify for the board your current employment?
Yes. I'm a professional engineer, and a professional planner licensed in the state of New Jersey, and I've appeared before this board on numerous occasions. I've also acted as a traffic consultant for this board in the past, quite a few years ago now, but I appeared throughout Union County in the capacity of site engineer, traffic engineer, and a professional planner on numerous occasions. I have to say well over 1,000 occasions in that capacity.
And you currently hold your licenses for the state of New Jersey?
Yes, I do.
He's been before us one, two times, so that's fine. Anybody on the board have any concerns? Okay, we'll accept it for a brief overview.
Yes. All right, so Mr. Steiger, briefly explain the site again. There's no site changes, and if you could touch on the items that were in that sketch that I just provided to you.
Wait, one second. One thing I want to add before, which would help. This was before us a decade ago when this was built. One of the things this board concluded was that we wanted two opposite type tenants in there. One intense, one non-intense. Because Five Guys was always the anchor. And the haircut place was an add-on. So please try to address, because that's what the board has to consider, where you're going to have two restaurants together.
That is correct. And what that tells us also is that the peak of the parking and the traffic are going to happen at the same time. It's not very much different than the Supercuts. I know I do it myself, and if you watch how hair salons or barbershops operate, lunchtime is a peak time. Run and get your haircut. That's got some time off, you go get your haircut. So the changes are really not going to be that intensive in terms of additional parking and traffic. This does not impose and also to exemplify that, this does not impose a change of use that creates a new need for a DOT access permit as well. DOT, based on their code, access code, no significant increase in traffic. Therefore, the current permit that's obtained for this site is still valid for what's being proposed here. Very simply, nothing's really changing on the site at all. Building is not changing. The only thing that's happening is that the Jersey Mike's is taking over with the Supercuts were, I'll call it the northern end of the site, and therefore nothing's really changed at all. We do have some comments from your engineer that are asking for some improvements on the site. I'll go over those in a moment briefly, but in terms of the requirements, parking, we still meet your conditional use standards of the parking. amount of parking, we're not asking for a variance there. I think the amount of parking is more than sufficient, and that was borne out in the parking studies that Mr. Disco has performed, that sufficient parking is provided on the site. The signage is in compliance with what's your ordinance requires as well. So, again, no variances. This is really just a simple change of tenancy with no differences in site configuration or layout.
Can I stop you, Mike, do you agree with this study that the parking will not be any issue?
I agree with that, yes.
And-
Can I ask a question before I turn about parking? Jersey Mike's, everyone that I've been at, they have 5, 6, 7 employees. Is there gonna be enough parking there for employees plus customers?
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
So,
Yes.
Rich, I'll open up to Mike. That was one of the concerns we had. Instead of them doing the traffic study,
Yeah.
even though they did one, I asked Mike to do it on behalf of the applicant who authorized it from the subcommittee. And Mike went to several different ones, got parking counts, and determined that they will have enough parking with the employees that are there. Is that correct, Mike?
That's correct.
Okay. And then, Steiger, I know there were several other, the updated the signage, the items that are noted on that sheet, if you just briefly indicate so we can get confirmation that we're in agreement with those items.
Yes, there are 5 items that were included in the comment letter for recommended site improvements. Add the driveway ID. Does that say driveway?
Yeah, ID signs, yes.
ID sign, yes, we will. 2, restripe all parking spaces at 201 Route 22, yes. Replace the stop signs, that's yes, we will do, and restripe all arrows, pavement arrows as well. And consider, last one, consider sealant or resurfacing to match the 7-Eleven pavement condition. I believe our applicant, your applicant, our client has agreed to that.
Yeah, and it's the same owner, actually, when we appeared here for the 5 Guys, actually, Joe and I were here a decade or so ago. It's actually the same owners who are the landlords for Jersey Mike's, and ran it by them, and no problem.
All these things would be conditioned before a CCO is.
Correct. So, I have no further questions of Mr. Steiger at this time. Again, our architect is here with the
I
floor
don't
plan.
think we
but I
need the
it's
architect. Let
pretty
me go to
simple.
Mike and Mike. Mike, anything further to add?
I have nothing further. I think we extensively studied the parking observation and situation, and I'm very confident it'll work. The employee parking, again, on the north side of the site was originally designated as employee parking. Those are constantly or consistently absent of cars. So the 5 Guys employees are not parking there. Obviously, it lends itself perfectly for the Jersey Mike's personnel to park there in the employee spots.
Okay.
Those spots, if you come in off of 22 westbound, that's the first spot you see. But if you bypass it to try to get closer to a door, you can't get back to them without going on 22. So that's the original thought process, why those were employee spots.
Yep.
But they're not being utilized now. So the employees can park there and leave the balance of the lot available.
Okay, let's make sure that Jersey Mike's is the tenants aware that.
They are,
Those are
yes.
the spots, to make sure. Mr. Mastretta?
We have no further comments. We agree that there's sufficient parking, and they've agreed to do all the improvements.
Okay, perfect. Jen, anything to add?
Nope,
No,
I'm
you're
good.
You're good. Okay, so let me open up the word. Mr. Huber?
I was just about the parking, I apologize for interrupting you.
Okay. We love you. No questions. I have nothing. Do you have anything further?
So, you guys talked about parking, and I understand and I trust your assessment. We all know this property with the U-turn, with the 7-Eleven, the 5 Guys, with Hillside adjacent, is extremely problematic. Now, when we approved 5 Guys, it was with the agreement that we'd have a restaurant, fairly higher use, especially during lunchtime, and the hair place. I pass by this location 3 to 4 times a week. I barely have ever seen anyone in the hair establishment. So now we're saying we're going to put another restaurant there, and what you had said was that the restaurant, there's 2 restaurants, the peak traffic and parking is going to be at the same time.
Similar to the Supercuts.
Right.
yes.
Jersey Mike's, to me, is a popular restaurant. There could be the same amount, and other Jersey Mike's I've been to, especially around lunchtime, there's a line of people. There's certainly several people. Are you comfortable that adding this type of use with, when their expert says the traffic will be at the same time as the other use on the property, and a 7-Eleven, which I would imagine around lunchtime also gets kind of popular, that we're not exacerbating what's already a very difficult traffic issue in that area? That's for anybody.
Yeah. It's the point that the subcommittee brought up. It's the point that the chairman has volunteered that he cuts through that property instead of using the U-turn.
What I have seen people do from Hillside to that U-turn is
Yeah, they go straight across.
is terrifying.
Right.
And I've almost gotten hit there many times. I see people in the audience are all smiling. We all know that U-turn. Right.
Right.
So my question is this parking? I completely understand. That was what the study was, and that said, okay, there's enough. But I'm very concerned about traffic and what happens there.
This only has 8 seats, so this is not going to be long-term people coming in because there's really only 2 tables there. So your typical, what I observed is the typical Jersey Mike's, and we went to 3 of them. The one on Route 10, because the subcommittee had suggested that we look at on a highway rather than just go into the one in Clark, for instance, or something like that. So we went to Route 10, which is comparable. We went to Route 1 in Linden, which is probably more intensive than this one, than Route 22, believe it or not. The average person, if they call in the order and come pick it up, they're in there 1 to 2 minutes and they're out. If they go in and make the order there and then leave with it, it takes 6 to 8 minutes. If they go in and eat, then you're talking about 20 minutes plus. But what we saw, and we categorized it in the report and the studies, is, you know, the most we saw at any of these at one time was 10 customers in a Jersey Mike's, and we looked at all the peak times for this. So if you take the worst case, which was 10 people physically there at the same time, even though they only have 8 seats. These other restaurants had 26 seats, all 3 of them. If you take the 10 plus what's historically been there that we've observed and we also measured there, it's going to work. Now, some of the recommendations were, as you come to this site, there is no identification of ingress and egress for these driveways. The first driveway, if you're going westbound, is only ingress in. And if you bypass that or don't know that it's there, the next driveway is the egress out, which is a difficult turn, but they can't go in there. So they're forced to go in through the 7-Eleven ingress and then work their way through the site. So by at least putting the signs up, it'll identify people and make it safer in terms of getting into the site and out of the site. The stop signs is because at nighttime, you know, you need the stop signs to be retro-reflective. The stop signs and the striping, since the site was built in 2010, they've all faded out essentially. So these are things to upgrade and increase visibility, safety, information for the vehicular user, and we're maximizing the safety on the site based upon the layout that the board approved in 2010. And no question that they go from Hillside across. That's not going to stop as a result of this. It's not going to necessarily be enhanced as a result of this.
I was just gonna add on one comment, and it's what we're requesting on the applicant. If the employees park in those initial spots right there, that's a key way of making sure that we have sufficient parking, so that people don't bypass it, that they're utilized and are full with the employees.
We did also evaluate the adjacent property owner. The subcommittee had suggested if we need the employees to park, they could park at the adjacent property, which is the Geico, the burger place, the healthcare place, and there's ample parking there. We're not suggesting this should be a shared parking thing, but that was made as an option. We studied that. Plenty of parking there too. I think as a practical matter, there may be 1 or 2 employees that are actually parking there.
I'm less concerned about the parking than just the crazy traffic movement.
We did point out that the U-turn was recently done by DOT. They widened that U-turn, they made it,
Flat.
well, they made it better because if you recall, the trucks were, as they turned, they were
There's an
gouging up.
18-wheeler there a couple of days ago,
Yeah.
across 2 lanes trying to get into the U-turn, stop traffic.
Yeah.
I mean, they would never design a U-turn like that now. In fact, if you're familiar with Mountainside, there used to be 3 U-turns.
Yeah.
Sure, they got rid of the first.
They're getting rid of the first one permanently.
Love to get
Because
rid
it can't make, it's not designed for trucks. The fate of this U-turn could change someday as well, because the trucks just couldn't negotiate. That's why they widened it. So anyway, the pavement's better there now. It's a little bit more defined and safer. It can only help the whole situation.
You satisfied, Mr. Barnett?
They're the experts.
I know, that's why.
That's why I asked.
What was your favorite foot-long sub when you? Rich? Julie? Ryan? Okay. Seeing none, do you have anything further?
No, nothing further, and
Let me
appreciate your time and concern and efforts.
So let me open it up to the public. Any of the members of the public wish to speak on the Jersey Mike's PCR Store 17 LLC? Seeing none, I'm going to close it to the public and remand it back to the board. I think a couple of the conditions before we go is they agree to everything in both the planner and engineer's letter, including the 5 improvements to the site.
Thanks.
And that there's going to be a directive to management to make sure that the parking for employees is in the first 3 spots, 4 spots? 3?
The whole bank there, I think 5 was.
5 spots, in the first 5 spots to utilize that.
One of the other things in the letter was, I guess when 7-Eleven did their resurfacing, the compliant ADA spot became non-compliant. So if it's the same property owner or leasee or whatever,
Okay.
that's in there,
So
that should be made back to.
That should be made back to a compliant.
Yeah, actually, that's the adjacent property owner, but we'll reach out to them. 7-Eleven, is owned by someone else, but yeah, we'll speak to them on that.
Okay, perfect. All right, seeing none, can I have a motion to approve with those conditions that we read?
Motion?
Can I have a second? I'll second it. Okay, Julie, okay.
Easter.
Okay, you seconded. Can we have a quick roll call?
Committeeman Huber?
Yes.
Mr. Laufer? Yes. Mr. Barnett?
Yes.
Mr. Cedarquist?
Yes.
Ms. Tamayo?
Yes.
Mr. Candigallo?
Yes.
And Chair Tiger?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank
Have
you.
a great night. Thank you very much. and
This
appreciate your
resolution-
efforts, and Mike and Mike.
This resolution should be read at the next meeting, which is
Yes, yeah, we'll touch base with you.
Base of Council. Okay.
Thanks again. Have a great night. Take care, Jay.
Okay, the next application before us is Congregation of Israel. It's a carryover from the last meeting. It's 9-24S, 339, 347 Mountain Avenue, 18 Pitt Road, Block 1801, lots 33 through 36 and 39. This is for preliminary and final site plan, minor subdivision, bulk variances and additions. Couple housekeeping items I want to enter into the record. Aaron Loeffler and, Mr. Loeffler and, whatever, Aaron Loeffler and Brian Cantagallo signed the certification of absent members for the meeting times that they missed, so that way they would be eligible to vote. Is that correct, Council?
That's correct. I have them before me. They signed them and swore them before me.
Perfect. So Counselor, you can come up. So some housekeeping items for the public, so they're aware. What we're going to do tonight is the applicant is going to do some cleanup of the last witnesses, the engineer and the temple president, and then have their 2 final witnesses appear, which I believe is a planner and architect. At that point, we're going to close the meeting, and what we've done is we've scheduled a special meeting for September 23rd, which is 10 days, hang on a second, 10 days from now. That way, that meeting will be dedicated to the public to comment on this application. So basically, that meeting on September 23rd will be, the Gruskin application will be like a 20-minute application, and then from, call it 6:50, 7 o'clock on, the public will have the entire time to come up and comment on that application. So we've created a special meeting pretty much for just that, to make sure that the public has adequate time, as opposed to doing it at 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, and the public not getting the full amount of the time. So I wanted to make sure everyone will have a chance to speak. So, no chance, I'll explain in a minute. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I wanted to advise the board that following the last hearing, the Congregation Israel professional team reviewed all the comments from the board members, the township engineer, and the township planner, and made changes to the plans. The applicant's team is very appreciative for the input that was provided by the township professionals. And as a result, the revised plans do incorporate their recommendations. I am recalling the applicant's engineer to testify in detail to those changes. But at this time, I wish to briefly list the changes. 1, 3 parking spaces have been eliminated that bordered the neighboring properties. 2, 5 parking spaces have been shifted to exist totally behind only 18 Pitt Road and no other neighboring property. 3, the aisle width in the existing parking lot has been decreased to provide space for a landscape buffer. 4, additional and larger landscape buffers have been created. 5, the height of the light poles is being reduced. 6, light shining onto any neighbor's property will be shielded. 7, the height of the outdoor terrace wall was increased to an appropriate height for privacy for both the congregation and the neighbors and for proper security. 8, lot coverage has been reduced. 9, 2 waivers have been able to be eliminated. And 10, a security plan was worked out with the police chief and police department that involves the lights, security cameras, and the height of the outdoor terrace wall. To expound upon the list of changes provided, I would like to recall Danielle Leshkiner of Dynamic Engineering Consultants, who's our licensed professional engineer, who had testified at the hearing on August 26th. I need Danielle.
You know you've been already sworn in and you're continuing with all that stuff.
I'm still under oath.
Okay. Danielle, if you would, I just provided a list to the board of all the changes that were made. Is that an exhibit, a new exhibit that you need to have marked?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we want to mark that as an exhibit, and then if you would please explain to the board all these changes that we've made.
Is that 8-3 or 8? I forget.
Hold on, I just have to pull out my sheet.
Either 2 or 3. I want to say 3, but I could be wrong.
It's A2. Is it A2?
Okay, it's 8-2.
I think so, yeah. Okay.
Marking this as A2. For the record, this is site plan exhibit dated September 12th, 2024. Good evening, everyone. Again, I would just like to echo Mr. Relic. We do appreciate all the comments that we received at the last meeting and our conversations with the board professionals. They've been great to work with so far, and we really appreciate the feedback. So, as Mr. Relic already outlined, we do have some changes tonight that I'd like to demonstrate for you. First is the general site plan layout changes, which the bottom line is that we removed 3 parking spaces that are adjacent to neighboring properties, and I'll point those out where they are. So that is a reduction in the proposed parking from 57 spaces to 54. And as a result of some of these changes, we're also reducing the impervious coverage by over 1,200 square feet, which is just about 2%. So 2 of those parking spaces that are being removed are located in this area where we were previously showing angled parking. And if you can see it from where you're sitting, the black line work here is the site plan that's currently on file and was submitted and previously testified to at the last meeting. There's red line work that represents the changes that we're proposing, so that when you get a chance to look at this, you'll be able to see where we made those changes and how that impacts the plan. So back to those angled spaces over here in the southern corner of the property. Instead of having them angled, we are making them now perpendicular spaces. And again, as we discussed at the last meeting, we are going to make those compact parking spaces. So that reduces that length by 2 feet. And by reducing the length, that also changes the width of this whole parking bay. Because of angled parking spaces, they are wider due to their angle. And we did eliminate 1 space on either side of this parking bay. So that increases the buffer to this side, which is lot 40, and it also increases the buffer to the rear of lot 38 here. We were also able to shift the spaces over so that they are only directly behind lot 38, which is owned by the applicant.
What is the exact buffer on each property? The 2 neighbors?
Sure, yeah. The buffer here is about 20 feet behind lot 38 in this area right here. And the buffer, there's a 15-foot buffer to the north of lot 40 on this side.
What about behind lot 40?
This here?
No. So,
Oh, behind lot 40,
because that was the discussion about that 1 parking spot.
Yes, yes, so that is now 7.1 feet. There was kind of a kink in the line there before. We were able to straighten that out and increase it slightly to 7.
Mike, what do you think is appropriate? Because the other one has, what did you say it was? The other property?
This is about 20 feet
1 second. Let the record reflect that Mrs. Ruggiero just joined at 7 o'clock, and you'll have to read the meeting minutes for 6:50 to 7-ish, whatever. We'll figure out the time. Sorry, go ahead. Mike?
I think she has one more parking spot to address. Let her address that, and she can address the width of that buffer as well before.
Yeah, so in this other area of the existing parking lot, we're also proposing to eliminate the space that was in the southern corner of this area, which increases this buffer to 11.1 feet, whereas under existing conditions, it's only 2.1 feet. So we are totally eliminating that and increasing that buffer, allowing some evergreen planting to be there, a variety of shrubs, to just create a little bit more distance on this side of lot 38.
Yeah, so you've got 11 feet, 15 feet, and 20 feet on the three areas that they've enhanced. When before we had as low as 2 feet on adjacent to lot, I think it's 38 to the right. So they've all been bumped up significantly as a result of these minor changes. So at the rear of, is it lot 40 to the left?
Yeah, that's lot 40.
Lot 40. So that went from, I think it was angled from 5 to 7, or 5 to 6, now it's all 7. If you lose one more parking spot there, you're gonna pick up another 9 foot of buffer to go from 7 to 16.
Yeah, I think I want to discuss that with the board when it's appropriate, but I think that, I don't know if we need 16, but I think a greater buffer in that area to get to, so that way all those residents have a more uniform buffer would be something to talk about, but we'll open that up to the board for discussion. I'm sure you'll share a landscaping plan.
Yes. But just to continue with the rest of the site layout changes, we also took a look at the existing parking area over here to the southeast of the property. We were originally proposing to basically keep the amount of impervious coverage in this area under the submitted plans. However, due to some of the comments that we received from the professionals, we decided to reduce this aisle width here to 24 feet, which expands this buffer area along the lot 37 lot line to about 5.2 feet, whereas before it was non-compliant at less than 2 feet. 2 feet is the minimum required along this lot line as a buffer. So now we have just over 5 feet there, and there will be additional plantings shown on our revised landscape plan. And so that also decreases impervious coverage in itself by about 400 square feet.
Ms. Lescudero, let me just ask you a question. With regard to the parking spot that the chairman is referring to, which would be the fourth parking spot, because 3 of them have been eliminated, this is number 4. Do you consider that to be a prime parking spot for the entrance to the synagogue?
It is one of the closest in proximity to the main entrance.
And with regard to the foliage that's there now, is there already a natural buffer that's separating the parking from the neighbor's property?
Yes, there is already a natural buffer, and thank you for pointing that out. I'll show you on the next exhibit, there are 3 evergreen trees that are existing today. They're pretty mature trees, and we're actually able to save those now due to these changes. There is also some plantings to the rear in this property over here, and we are supplementing that as well.
And the way the car would be parked, is it facing an open yard, or is it facing what looks like to be a garage or a shed?
It's facing the existing garage of lot 32.
And is there a fence that's going to be blocking that car from an adjoining property?
Yes, there will, a 6-foot vinyl.
A 6-foot vinyl. So if somebody were to be parked there, are their headlights going to be shining through, or is it solid?
It is solid.
It's solid. So in terms of that parking spot, the buffer that exists there, or what exists there now, do you think that that provides adequate buffering for the neighboring property?
I do. The car would not be visible due to only the 6-foot fence and then plus the added vegetation would increase the buffers.
Okay, thank you.
Mike, what do you think? I mean, it's our job as the board to try to eliminate impacts for residents. I'm not dying on the mountain on it, but I want to hear what the board has to say, but for me, more of a buffer to the residents that are going to have this in their backyard. I mean, you're putting up the same fence as well.
Yes, the same.
It will be uniform.
I mean, what do you?
Obviously, more is better. Where do you get to the point that you've got enough buffer? So we were able to, without really, I think, remember, originally we had 2 bank parking spaces. So we went from 2 to 3 at this point, so there's only really a net of 1 so far.
Yeah.
All the other buffer enhancements, I'll call them, were in view of where the building and the entrances to shield the three residential properties, but primarily the two, one on each side of the Temple-owned property, to the front entrance activity where the stroller parking is, the door is. There's certainly the one to the left on Lot 40 is for the parking lot essentially only. I'm not sure if there's outdoor activities gathering in that spot. More is better. The difficulty there, and we've asked their team, is to pick up a couple of feet. You can't really, it's either 9 foot to get lose the space. You can't pick up 3 feet or 4 feet or 5 feet more without losing the same space. We thought we could potentially shift the whole line of parking closer to Mountain Avenue. I don't want to put words in it, but I think the team feels that bordering on getting a little unsafe as somebody backs out of that spot into where really the Mountain Avenue ingress driveway. So that's the trade-off. We don't want to jeopardize the safety there. So if you lose the parking spot, I mean, maybe they could squeeze another foot, but I mean, other than narrowing the parking spaces from a 9-foot width to something narrower, which is not our normal, ordinance requirement, which is our normal requirement, the only way you pick up more buffer is to lose the one full space.
We'll see what the board wants.
Yep, I mean, if you go out to 8.5-foot spaces, you're gonna pick up a half a foot for every one of
I don't
those.
want to make it where
Yeah.
people are hitting their doors into.
I'm just giving the trade-off, right.
I just ask a follow-up. If that were to become also a compact space, would that look odd, or would that give you more buffer? Would that perhaps be the compromise?
Some compact spaces are also a reduction in width to about 8.5 feet in, say, other municipal ordinances. So it wouldn't look odd if only the width was reduced, but if we're talking about the length, then it would look odd if all of the spaces adjacent are the same.
That's what I think.
Yeah, I don't know if it's 9 that you're losing, then the buffer goes to whatever it is, or maybe you only give 5 feet, 4 feet back to the buffer, and you could put it in, I think you needed a design waiver or something for the amount of parking spaces without a break. You can always add in a break somewhere and put some trees in that other 4 feet.
No, that was in the existing parking lot, and we resolved that issue.
So I don't know, when you finish testimony, we'll open up to the board, just like we've done before, where we're all in agreement.
Remember, Mr. Chairman, the parking ratios were established first time, so we're significantly more parked per the ratio, parking spaces to size of the seating. That's much more increase, still a variance. So the loss of one more parking spot is much less in relation to what the existing ratio of parking is. So.
Okay, continue, and also touch on the EV issue, because
Sure,
that
yes.
came up as well.
Yeah, I just have a couple more things
Go
for
ahead.
this exhibit. So I did just want to point out that the elimination of this space in the southern corner of the existing lot also does eliminate the waiver that we were previously requesting for the continuous spaces, which only 15 are permitted, and before we were proposing 16, now it's back down to 15, so that waiver is no longer required. Also, on the site plan, we were adding a note to just solidify that the applicant is willing to replace any portions of the sidewalk along the 2 road frontages that are in disrepair per the township engineer's staff. And I would like to move on to landscaping unless you prefer I touch on the EV space.
Taste the EV, because that was a concern, because that affects whether, I want council to discuss whether if it's not a public EV, does it still just require more of a variance? Which is fine, if you're granting a variance for 50 or 54, whatever, it makes no difference, but do you get double the credit if you're not opening up to the public? Which I think we all agree, the board, we don't want it open.
Right, it's a fair question, and the board and the applicant is on the same page. We don't want this to be an area that people can see on their phone, that they can go charge their car and come to the parking lot and they can do that. We did look into that a little bit more, and fortunately, we learned that when the contractor, whoever is ordering the EV charging stations, they would specify to the manufacturer whether or not they want them to be on the grid or off the grid, so basically public or private. And this is something other professionals in our office have come across, because we have many other, say, residential applications where they have chargers in a private parking garage. Can't even get into the garage, like for some cases they're locked, or you need a key fob or something. So in those cases, they would also do the private option. Otherwise, what's the point of having this grid of charging stations that you can't even access? so this would be the route that the applicant would take to make sure that they are off the grid, they're private, they're only for the use of the congregation.
Okay, so you testified last time that they get 2 for 1 or something.
Oh, yes.
So would the question be, since it's not public, do you need to revise that calc so the variance doesn't include the 2 for 1 is all I'm saying? That's what
Right.
I'm asking counsel and counsel.
Yeah, fair question. We were not able to find anything in the state regulations that stipulate whether or not that actually impacts the requirement satisfaction. So in our opinion, it does not impact our ability to count the 2 spaces double, let's say, just because they're public or private. And again, in the example that I was just describing with residential, if they were all private, then they wouldn't count for anything in projects like that, and they do. So in our case, it wouldn't impact our compliance with the state regulations for EV charging, and we would be able to make sure that nobody else can see them.
Matt, I'll leave it to you to look into to see. I mean, it does make a difference. It's whether you're getting a variance for X spots versus Y spots.
Yes, yes.
I would just make a comment on that, that if there is nothing in the, in the state requirements, but we're not sure whether or not it's entitled to the double, I mean, I would rather err on the side of caution that the parking variance is based upon that we're basically not getting 2 for 1, so that there's not an issue.
That's what I would think, but you can work it out with counsel.
Okay. Not a problem.
Let's see the landscape. Clean slate.
Now, this was never submitted before. This needs to be marked as an exhibit.
Another exhibit, I'm marking this A3.
Correct.
This is entitled Landscape Exhibit, again with today's date of September 12th, 2024. Scale is 1 inch equals 20. It looks very similar to the landscape plan that is currently on file, just with the changes that I'm about to explain. Generally, it incorporates the new site design as the previous exhibit showed in red. We've now brought that in as if this was in our full plan set and shows the proposed design. In the area of the compact spaces, which are now perpendicular, and we've now increased buffering on both sides, those have been filled in with various plantings, including hollies, arborvitae, various shrubs. In the area where we removed this space in the southeastern existing parking lot, we've again added other evergreen and deciduous mixtures, trees, and shrubs. We've also replaced some of the plantings that were proposed here along that one space that we were just discussing, that faces the garage here, adjacent to lot 32. Instead of what was previously proposed as azalea shrubs, we're now proposing arborvitae, and we've even increased the planting height of those to 8 to 10 feet. So as planted, they will be 8 to 10 feet, and then they will just continue to grow from there. We've also supplemented the landscaping here on this side adjacent to lot 37. We already spoke before, it's 37. And again, we have a mixture of evergreens and deciduous trees and shrubs, just to supplement, again, what's already there adjacent to the fence. And on the other side of that fence, there is the existing vegetation, which will remain.
How many trees are you taking down on the site versus adding? I think would be helpful to know.
I don't have that number quantified, I'm sorry, but we can
Well,
provide.
how many are you adding? How many are going on site? I don't think there's that many on site. Mike, do you know how many they're taking down? Under 10?
Yeah.
Under 10. Okay.
We're also actually trying to save the line of trees that exists beyond the playground that faces Mountain Avenue and replanting them.
We're adding 41.
Okay. So you're taking out less than 10 and, and you're adding more 4 times. That's fine.
Yes, and as I mentioned, there are some pretty mature existing trees that is in this area right here. Previously, we were proposing to remove them because of the angled parking that was there, but now, because of that space elimination, we're able to save those trees and then supplement around them.
Okay.
Any other questions?
So you would say that a significant amount of added buffer, landscape buffer,
Yes.
has been put onto this plan since the last hearing, is that correct?
Certainly, yes, in various areas of the plan.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, from an aerial view, I would estimate from those 2 residential structures, those properties, maybe 6 trees max.
I think they're adding more than enough. That would be acceptable. Now, you know that whatever planting, you have the 2-year maintenance guarantee and stuff, as opposed to.
We accept that responsibility.
Next, I'd just like to discuss the lighting changes that we're proposing. I
Is
will
this a new exhibit?
Yes, I will
Okay.
mark this as A4. This exhibit is entitled Lighting Exhibit, dated today, September 12th, 2024. Scale is 1 inch equals 20 feet. Again, very similar to the lighting plan that was submitted and currently on file with some changes as follows. We were previously proposing 18-foot lights for the area lights to illuminate the parking lot. Currently, existing today, there are 20-foot lights. We had an engineer go out and measure in the field, and so we discovered that they are currently not compliant. 18 feet is the maximum allowable height as according to the ordinance, so they are currently non-compliant. We understand that there's been some issues brought to our attention by the neighbors, and very understandably, the applicant would like to mitigate that with this proposal. So instead of the previously proposed 18-foot poles, we're now reducing those to 14-foot poles. So that's a 6-foot difference between what is out there today and what is now being proposed. In addition, we will provide half shields on the light fixtures to provide even more, even more surety that the light will be directed away from the neighbors, will not be allowed to spill over behind into the residential properties. I'm referencing just these two, but that is the same case for these lights over here. And the canopy lights also that are being proposed, which are shown here around the building addition, they will be pointed downward so that there is not an outward glare towards the adjacent properties. And all proposed lights will also be dimmed.
So, a couple quick things. Number one, I think the agreement or the discussion was that within 60 days, if the board acts favorably, or any adoption of resolution, that they will fix the existing lights to shield them for the neighbors. Is that correct?
Yeah, the poles are going to remain. They've
Yeah,
been
nothing's
there for
changing.
50 years, but we are going to shield so that the backyards of those surrounding properties will not get that light glare.
Okay. And then a couple things, I know there was on the record, and I'll ask Mr. Disco to comment on this. Our chief, at the last meeting, I had asked that, kind of taking it from the board, away from the board, that the police chief would review the lighting from the discussion, whether it would be on at all times, dusk till dawn, whatever it might be, and I think the police chief did review this and issued the board a letter. Mr. Disco, can you summarize that to the board? I know everyone should have a copy of it if they don't. Pass it around.
The letter
It's on the
was
Google Drive.
dated September 11th. I saw it this morning.
Yeah.
So the chief and the Captain Rachel met with, I presume, Attorney Harlech, and they discussed lighting in general, security, cameras, and the height of the patio wall. on the-
Outdoor terrace wall,
Outdoor
yes.
terrace wall. And the chief lays out, it's a page-and-a-half letter, that he believes that the security measures in place for the video and surveillance, the wall height to be 5 feet as was introduced in the opening statement, and that the lighting was acceptable for security reasons. Obviously, he touches on in a letter the bleeding into the residential properties, and also post-installation measures to verify that what, is planned will
Our
actually.
ordinance allows that for you to do.
Our ordinance, lighting, all lighting is subject to, per ordinance, a post-installation inspection, whatever you want to call the measurement, to make sure that what is shown on paper is actually, works in the field. When you talk about lighting, you're talking about horizontal foot candles, which is the brightness, and then the glare. So I think the most serious complaint so far is really the glare of looking at the fixtures, but shielding that can cure that. The light levels is based upon the targeting of the fixtures and shielding, and also the dimming capability of it. So I think the technology now is so much different than what was installed in 1976, presumably, and so we can do so much better, and I think they will do better for that. But I don't want to read the.
No, that's fine, that's fine.
Everybody has the letter, but the chief was, I think, I wasn't at the meeting, chief was very comfortable with the security measures that are in place. I think the applicant actually consulted with a security expert to come up with these things, so I think.
Okay, that's
What the board requested, the chief did, and the police department did.
Mr. Chairman, I just would like to piggyback onto what Mr. Disco said. I did consult with the Director of Security for the Jewish Federation of Greater Metro West. His name is Thomas Michaels. He provided our team with all of his input. I provided that to the chief of police. I did sit in a meeting with the chief and Captain Rachel, and we went over everything, and I'd like to add that we further I represent on behalf of my client, that once we have those cameras installed, to ensure that there's privacy for the neighbors, the police chief and whomever else from the police department can come in, see what's showing on our screens to ensure that privacy is secured.
Perfect, that's fine. We'll leave it as the police chief or his designation.
Yes.
That way, in case he's busy. Fine, continue. You good?
I just think in your testimony, you had referred accidentally to our 18 Pit Road as Lot 38, it's 39.
Oh, okay,
Yes, I just wanted to clear that up for the record, and that all parking spaces were moved to shift behind the property that the congregation owns, is that correct?
That is correct.
On that line?
There are no longer any parking spaces behind Lot 30.
Correct.
Perfect, I think that buffer. Mr. Mistretta, anything before we
I
open?
think- I would just add that we've had an ongoing discussion, and we put a lot of issues on the table, and it appears that they've addressed all of our major issues regarding the concerns with the lighting, reducing impervious coverage, increasing substantially the amount of landscaping, plantings, and the width of the landscaping buffers, so.
Okay. Just stay up there because we're going to go through the board to talk, and I want to ask to adjust the parking. So I'll turn to Mr. Kinagala first. What is your thought, any questions for the,
Can you put the exhibit up that had the landscaping? The one, I think, just prior to that?
Julie?
The property touches how many residents' properties? Four?
Yes.
And if you start in the lower right-hand corner, the buffer going from the right around all the other properties that it touches is about how wide from there?
This width,
Yes.
presently, it is 1.9 feet, and we're increasing it to just over 5 feet.
Uh-huh. And can you keep going around the rest of the properties?
Currently, the buffer, I guess adjacent to Lot 38 is, I also believe it's about 2 feet. We're increasing it to, mind if I reference my site plan?
Oh, sure,
exhibits?
yeah.
Dimensions on it. Thank you. Presently, I'm sorry, it's 2.1 feet to Lot 38, and we are increasing that to 11.1.
For that whole angle, it'll be 11.1?
For this corner right here,
Right, and then if
Lot
it goes all the way up to the back, it's,
yes, going up to the back, we are not changing the buffer here. Again, I think it's just about 2 feet,
okay,
and we're not touching that curb line.
okay, and then in the back of it?
Yep, as you wrap around, again, to the rear of Lot 38, that is currently about 2 feet, and we're increasing that to about 20 feet.
Okay.
And just behind Lot 39, which is owned by the applicant, there is a portion that I believe is about 4 feet. I don't have that exact number in front of me, but we are increasing that to just about 5 feet.
Okay.
And that it's only the 5 feet just in a small portion here.
Right.
And then, as you move along to Lot 40, sorry, let me, the survey seconds. Behind Lot 40 currently is the rear yard of the existing dwelling that's there today. So there's no parking there currently, but we are proposing the 7-foot buffer right behind there.
Mhm.
And then as you move to this lot line all the way to the southwest, it's bisected by the shared driveway.
So, the question from the chair, Mr. Chair, earlier about the 7-foot moving to 16-foot, you'd lose one parking space?
Yes.
On the most, okay. And if that happened in almost all areas, this would be an improvement in a buffer over what it is now to those 1, 2, 3 properties?
Yes.
Thank you. I don't have any further questions.
Marissa? David? No, I'm fine. As I said last meeting, the parking to me is not an issue.
I have a question. The compact, I'm going back to those compact parking spaces. Are they gonna be labeled as compact park spaces?
We actually don't currently propose any signage in that area, but we can add signage or striping on the ground if that's preferred instead of covered.
Because I'm just curious if those having compact spaces like that, if that's not gonna cause a problem. I mean, I'm picturing lots of fender benders and cars bumping into each other with the doors. Do you see that as a potential problem there?
I don't see that as a potential problem because we're not actually reducing the width of the spaces.
Just the length?
Correct.
All right, how do you define a compact space? I mean, who's driving a compact car? Like, how do you determine what that is? I know.
Sure, a typical sedan is actually considered a compact car.
And most people seem to be driving SUV spaces.
I would say if you have an F-250, don't park in a compact space.
So you're gonna leave it up to people's,
Yes.
the driver's own.
Right, right. There's no, in other properties, there's no real way to.
Do you put up a sign?
regulate who
Do you put up a sign in that spot, compact only?
Yes, we can put compact car parking only, but to address the question, you would have to know whether or not your car is compact.
Yeah, this seems to be very.
Well, it might, I mean, it'll be up to the board, but it might be nicer if it just said compact on, I've seen that where they say just compact on the, you know, on the pavement, so that we don't have all this signage going on also.
That's fine, that's fine. I think that's acceptable.
I drive a compact car.
Depends how you define compact.
Yeah, I understand.
I would consider the old Volkswagens to be compact.
You're dating yourself.
It's been known to happen.
Huber? So what I want to just open up for a quick discussion is the spot. I mean, is 7 okay? I mean, I think we got some adequate buffers on the other parts of the properties. The other one was, I think we got some good buffering on some of the properties. I just want to open it up to the board to make the decision so we can put this to Ed. Ed, do we want to eliminate one spot? And I'm not saying if we do eliminate one spot, we need 16. Maybe it's 12, and then they kind of space out the parking down the line. I know they wouldn't get additional parking, but it would give some bigger spots through the thing. So, David, and just work our way down, what is your thoughts? And then,
Look, as much as we can do to increase the buffer, we're gonna give the variance which they need for whether it's 1 or 2 more spots or less spots. We'll make sure that's in place. This is a low parking demand property. We all know that. So to me, it's not an issue. So I would rather err on the side of as much buffer as possible. And if we have to adjust the numbers on the variance, I'm perfectly fine.
okay, and then, so also, before, there's an option that we could do. We could bank it and then deal with it at another time. If it's necessary, it can come back before the board. I mean, that could be a discussion, or do we just eliminate it?
I'd rather not have them have to come back if
Well,
if
they
they don't
can go
have
to
to
the
for
TRC.
something like this, but, you know.
So your suggestion is to,
That would be, yeah, my suggestion is as much buffer as possible, so take the space out. If they're fine with that, you know, I'm fine with it.
Marissa?
I'm definitely in favor of more buffer, more landscaping if possible.
Richard? Julie? Brian?
I agree with Mr. Burnett.
Aaron? I know you were on site with Mr. Disco.
Yeah, I think the original request is for what they request with all the different parking. I'm questioning if it's still gonna serve, if you're putting a lot more buffer, if it's still gonna suit the purposes of their need for, or it's gonna solve the problems of the need for more parking. I'm just a little concerned that this may come back sometime in the future saying, hey, we need more space.
Right, but they're not increasing the amount of seats in the sanctuary. They're not increasing the membership of
Yeah, but
the shul.
no one can predict who's
The
gonna be
amount
coming.
of cars that are there, my logic is the amount of cars that are there today are gonna be the amount of cars that are gonna be there after this is built.
And they don't use the whole lot.
And they don't, you're right,
Right.
exactly.
I was there Friday night, I think I walked in there.
Went to services?
No, but I just wanted to see how, you know, and they didn't use all the spots now.
Right.
Yeah. And there's other options for parking that are nearby.
Yeah, I think it's nothing we're trying to take away spots. I know it's a prime spot versus not. The idea is our board, as representatives of the public being on the board, which I want to try to buffer those neighbors so that way they have as much space, more trees, the trees will grow in and they'll have a natural buffer. If 16 is a little too much because you're worried about people congregating, then make it maybe 12, 13, and then maybe space out some of the spots a little bit. mean, that may be something so you don't have such compact spots as.
Or add more landscaping.
Or add more landscape. So,
Well,
I'll leave.
if I may, just where the compact spots are located, if you take away the spot you're referring to, it doesn't help us in terms of dealing with the compact spots. And in terms of the line, and please, Danielle, correct me if I'm wrong, but in terms of the line, the way we have it lined up, she's right. We don't want to get closer to Mountain Avenue by any stretch.
I'm not saying add
And-
another spot, I'm saying if you want to make it 12 and then add 4 feet and make some of the spots a little bit bigger, go right ahead.
Then we would have one other compromise, since we do consider this to be a prime spot. In terms of the buffering, I mean, it's obvious that the board is going to want that spot eliminated, but would we at least have the luxury of doing our own landscaping there, our own buffering there, leaving maybe a little bit of, not that trees are coming all the way up to us when people are coming out, but that we have some open space?
Yeah, you could, well, subject to, Mr. Disco will work with you on that
Okay.
discussion. I think, we're okay with Mr. Disco kind of working them on?
We just don't want a thick tree buffer
No.
that's right, standing in the midst of our parking lot like that.
Yeah. It'd be nice if it's grass and as opposed to.
Okay, yes, we're okay with grass.
Perfect, okay. Anything further from you?
I feel like we should shake hands then.
No. An accord. Anything further from the board from engineering? So this is the end of engineering, correct?
I don't have anything further.
Perfect, so you agree to come back at the next meeting as well?
She will be present.
Perfect.
Okay, this will take only a minute, probably. I would just like to recall Dr. Josh Smilo to clear up one piece of his testimony. Thank you.
Sir, you're still under oath as well.
Yes.
Okay, so Dr. Smilo, you previously testified at the prior hearing in connection with the outdoor terrace. And that's the outdoor terrace that's going to be connected to the new addition building. And I believe that your testimony had to do with the use of the terrace, but I would like you today to explain the use of that terrace, because I think there was a little bit of confusion with regard to when you testified and then when you were asked the question.
Right. As I previously testified, the terrace is needed for a religious reason. We have a holiday where we are commanded to erect a sukkah, a type of hut, for a 7-day period, which occurs during the fall. This is not the only time the outdoor terrace will be used. It will be used as needed, but its use is expected to be seasonal and infrequent. Also, as I previously testified, to be respectful to our neighbors, the outdoor terrace will have a high wall for privacy, no lights on the terrace will face the neighbors, and the noise ordinance will be followed.
That was all I needed from Dr. Smilo to clear up that testimony. I have nothing further.
Anything first from the board? Aaron?
No, I'm good.
David? Marissa? Richard? Julie? Brian? Mr. Disco? Mr. Mistretta?
I think that ties in with what the chief had reviewed, and something, the wall may have increased it to the 5 feet.
Yeah.
Which would be a better shield for
Anyone looking over?
any visual, and obviously if there's any sound at all, the taller wall is better.
But we agreed also no speakers outside or anything like that.
We agree to that.
Okay. Anything further? Okay.
Thank you.
That's it for me.
Okay, so
Now I'd like to call David Mayerfeld of Mayerfeld Architecture. He is a licensed professional architect.
1 second. Smilo, you agree you will be at the next meeting?
Everybody here will be at the next meeting. From my team.
Just want to make sure, because that's important. Who's coming up?
David Mayerfeld. He hasn't been sworn yet. He'd like to be affirmed.
Counselor, just approximately, you have 2 witnesses. I just want to see if we're going to take a break. The timing of, how long would it take you for your next 2 witnesses?
I would like to finish with both of them today.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
The next meeting is all public.
I mean, if you want to, this would probably be a good spot to take like a 5-minute break if that's what you're looking
All
for.
right, so the board, you good with, we'll take a 5-minute break? So for the public, we're going to take a quick 5-minute break, let you get set up and custom, and it's 7:35, we'll begin at 7:40.
Not a problem.
Architect up right now. So let's
That
see
is
what
correct,
this-
Mr. Chair.
Let's see what this looks like.
It needs to be affirmed
Yes.
and qualified.
Sir, can you please raise your right hand? Do you affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth? Could you please state your name for the record, spell your last name?
Name is David Mayerfeld, last name spelled Mayerfeld.
Okay, and can you provide, for the benefit of the board, your current profession, where you're employed, and explain to us your qualifications?
I'm employed as an architect. Our own firm is called Mayerfeld Architecture. Currently, we have offices in Muncie, New York. We did have an office up until COVID in New York City, which is no longer. We also have a sister office that's run by my son in the 5 towns in Long Island.
And you're currently licensed as an architect in the state of New Jersey?
Licensed site architect in the state of New Jersey and also the state of New York.
Have you appeared before planning boards and zoning boards throughout the state of New Jersey?
Many a time, yes.
And have you been accepted as an expert witness at those boards?
Yes, I have, thank you.
Board have any concerns? No? He seems like he's been around for a while.
The color of my hair just
Mr. Chairman,
I'd like to make a motion to replace the chair.
exactly.
I'm not letting that go to a vote.
Well, we have to
I'll take that as a compliment.
now.
In other words,
Limited in experience.
I was going to say, the chair meant that he was seasoned and they accept anything he says. All right.
I did have different color hair when I first started.
Okay, Mr. Mayerfeld, if you would, I would appreciate it if you could take the board through the architectural plans from the perspective of the existing building, and then what we're doing to the existing building when we go to the new addition, and then the overall picture of why we need this.
Okay, first board is the existing building.
What, first we have to clarify, are those plans that the board already has, or is that to be marked as an exhibit?
To my knowledge, the board already has
Okay.
presented it, but they've been submitted
Okay.
to the board early on.
Okay.
That's what we call existing first floor plan, we call sheet DM 100, the reason why it's called DM, not because it's my initial, but it's demolition. Because you have existing building with a lot of interior demolition.
Can you bring the microphone closer?
Mr. Mistretta, the plans that are on site? On record?
So the dotted lines showing walls to be removed, specifically in the Simcha Room, also known as the social hall, there's currently the stage platform which will be removed. There are 2 small kitchens which will be removed because we're going to have newer kitchens in the new addition, which I'll discuss later on. There is a small chapel, 2 small classrooms, coat room, and bathrooms. They're all being removed because we're going to be updating those in the new facilities. Also, there's a small office that's going to be replaced with a newer office, et cetera. Basically, the sanctuary space is pretty much staying the same as it is, just as a few more seats, which we'll get into later on.
We don't have to because it's already been submitted. It's the plans you have.
Okay, so this board is called A101, it's called the proposed first floor plan. Now, this plan has been revised since it's been submitted. There was building dimensions added after our TRC meeting. Frankly, at the TRC meeting was proposed and suggested, and we actually made the building shorter, so there'd be no variances required. Front yard variance initially was requested, but now we made the building smaller, so there was no variance required for that. So that's reflected in this plan. Also reflected in the plan is obviously how the new building will look together with the addition. I'll try to walk you through that. Currently, the main entrance is on Mountain Avenue. There's also an old side entrance on the side of the small parking lot. But what we're doing is, again, the sanctuary space is pretty much the same. Provide some seating, get a few more seats in there. I think we're going from 334 to 351. The Simcha Room, which we call the social hall, will be now a nice clean space, rectangular in shape, and we have to accommodate up to approximately 280 people, 28 tables at 10 persons each. Also, we're going to reworking the interior lobby space and the coat rooms. You talk about parking on cars. We have to park the people so they can park their coats very comfortably, have a little locker space, so you just come in and you feel very comfortable when you have a nice coat room, nice place. Even small lobbies, people can converse before they go into the synagogue itself, so it makes a more friendly user building. And as the Dr. Smilo, mentioned last time, is that the major addition here, the purpose of this addition is because there's a lot of young families and lots of youngsters that come into the synagogue. Currently, they're all sitting right behind this thin wall in the social hall. It becomes a disturbance. So therefore, very consciously, we set up youth rooms on this level for the youngest group, and more youth rooms on the upper floors we'll get into next. We also have now ADA compliant toilet rooms, comfortable toilet rooms, men's room, women's room, a nursing room, even a family room, so that, again, it's just comfort for the people that are currently be using the building. Also, there'll be a new kitchen. I told you there's old kitchens which are over here. They're going to be removed and be a brand-new kitchen coming in here. There's going to be an elevator, so for ADA accessibility, since we're having a multi-floor building, we'll have an elevator in here. There's a smaller chapel room, which is going to be relocated. The chapel room will be over here, and as you can see from the rendering, the new entry point that you keep looking at, the rendering points out, is this new entry over here. And as described earlier by the site people, that the parking, people come from the park, they feel very comfortable walking into the building with the new addition. Obviously, there are stairs in here to go up and down. Everything, egress has been all calculated, so everything will meet code, actually above building code. The next plan shows the second floor plan. Again, more.
This is part of the submission, correct?
This is part of the submission, correct.
Go ahead.
Just the first floor plan has been revised, but this is no change since the initial submission. Again, it shows the youth rooms, multi-purpose room, the roof terrace, sukkah room, which we just spoke about earlier. Again, new bathrooms up here, so very comfortable. Small warming kitchens, storage spaces where we can get them in. Obviously, staircases to make it egress, always two staircases to go to communicate to all levels. Small things such as janitor's closets, which are actually a code requirement, so that the building should function properly and be maintained properly. Now, on this plan, these are building elevations,
Once again.
which have been updated.
With the board, each board, you have to tell me whether to mark it as exhibit or they already have it.
This one's been updated. They already have one, but it's been updated. Personally, frankly, we were, actually way back at the first TRC meeting, we were asked to notate on the elevations, the building additions and building heights. They're showing graphically, but now we've denoted them with dimension lines, so it's very clear what's called existing building, proposed addition.
What date is on this plan?
So the most recent one here is dated 9/05/24 with the last
That has to
revision.
be marked as an exhibit.
Okay, correct. Show
Are there any others that were dated later than the submission date that they have in front of them?
Correct. The first floor plan, like I noted earlier.
Let's bring that back up so that we can accurately mark that as an exhibit. That's what I was asking. So this is what, identify the sheet, please.
It's called drawing A101, proposed first floor plan.
We need to mark that as A5. And the one you were about to discuss?
Okay, again, this has been updated as I mentioned earlier. It shows the new
Which
build.
sheet are we calling this, and we have to mark it?
Well, this is A300, and it's called north-south elevations.
All right, that's going to be A6.
Okay, we'll mark it right now. So what this shows is the exterior of the building. It labels all materials which relate to the color rendering. Basically, there's lots of brick on the existing building. There's on the new facade, we're having Duranodic bronze window frames and colors, which will appear along the north side. Also, we're going to replace some of the existing windows on the north elevation so that the colors will match, will be the Duranodic bronze. Also, the entire coping of all the new building, the existing building, will all be a uniform color, again, the Duranodic bronze to tie the whole building in together.
Mr. Mayorfeld?
Sure.
The renderings are in various places
Correct.
here, but they haven't been marked either. So let's consider the rendering as A7. They're all identical.
Same. Just 1A7, okay. Okay, thanks. Appreciate that.
And Mr. Mayorfeld, I do believe that what you were just describing, if I may ask a question, the renderings all reflect how we have adequately tied the old building to the new building by putting these dividing metallic browns so that A, it looks more modern, and B, it doesn't look like we just put an addition on a building. Is that correct?
Absolutely correct. Also, it's showing up on this, we have all building heights on here with dimensions. Specifically, we're showing the height of the terrace. A wall is 5 feet, and then another 5 feet to actually have a pergola structure, which is what's called the top of the sukkah, and gives it a nice, aside from the place, that's where they put, bamboo mats during the holiday, but it just gives it a nice continuity, and it has like a pergola feeling, which will look good on the building. Also, we've shown outdoor lights. We were asked to do that, and as you know, Dynamic went through that earlier, so we put that on the elevations. A lot of detail in terms of dimensions, but the point is that all the dimensions and the height specifically, we even showed a height for a potential mechanical screening for the roof, which I'll get to later. We'll have some roof-mounted equipment, but all the heights, everything's less than 35 feet, so there's no requirement, variance. No height variance requested for our design.
And no setbacks as well, correct?
That's
Setback
correct.
variance.
That's correct. No setback variance. We adjusted the building based on the TRC meeting we had, I think, last April. Seems like a long time ago.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is A301. It's called east-west elevations, and it's been updated, so I guess this will be what,
A8.
A8. So again, what this shows, the west elevation, which is showing, again, because of the angle of the building, that's why you see that from two elevations. The elevations are drawn straight on, but in fact, it's angled, but that's why it's drawn on both the west and south elevations. Again, showing the canopies, showing the mechanical roof shielding as required, it shows the outdoor lighting, which we spoke about earlier. And the east elevation is pretty much existing conditions. Now, this plan was presented earlier, but I just want, we've done two renderings or isometric views of the building aside from the rendering. This shows basically the existing building on Mountain Avenue, and this is the addition. Just some of the detail we try to pick up on here. There will be a Duranodic bronze color break here so that this is existing brick, this will be new brick, and since it's hard to get brick to match existing, even though we'll do the best we can, we're going to have a color break with material so it'll all fit in together. And like the renderings show, all the coping will be all the same color.
Mr. Mayorfeld, that is something that was submitted prior, does not need to be marked as an exhibit?
I think this is the same drawing you had last time. I think we already had this, but although we do have yeah, that's correct. It's the same drawing as done earlier. It shows a date of 4/10/24, and shows a revision date of August 10th, yeah, August 8th.
Let's just make it an exhibit.
Okay,
I was just going to say, let's be safe.
no
I'm
problem.
going to call it A9.
See how we can go.
A9.
And what do we call that, Mr. Mayerfield? Is that which elevation?
This is not an elevation, this is an overall view looking from Mountain Avenue towards the existing building and the new addition over here.
Okay. Same question. Is that an exhibit?
This is a new exhibit, yes.
That's A10.
A10.
Tell me what it is.
So A10 is a view of the addition of the building, which really relates to the architectural color rendering that you have. You can see the new entrance over here. We can see the awning over here, an awning over here, an awning over here, and the sukkah terrace up here with the pergola roof and the 5-foot-high wall over here. So you kind of see the whole building all together from this view. And again, like earlier noted, all the colors, the coping colors will match, will tie in, so that at the end of the day, all the building reads as one element. The terrace, there's actually a dimension on the terrace. I'll go back. It's on the second floor plan. I'll relate that.
It's 1,740 square feet in one section, and there's a turn that's 320 square feet.
Enough? You want? I agree. I gave her the numbers. But the point is that there's two, the 1,700 includes the oddballs, the rectangular plus that little oddball space. But the actual rectangular space, there's a dimension on there. Those are the two dimensions that the attorney just read off to you. We see. This is just a duplicate, of the rendering we looked at.
That was A7.
That was A7, but we marked that one A7. But what I'd like to show you,
This needs to be marked?
yeah, because this needs to be marked because it's a little different. It's the mechanical roof plan that the mechanical engineer prepared.
A11 mechanical roof plan.
And it's M1303. But basically, the important part is that all AC equipment, condensers, outdoor condensers will be on the roof, will not be on the site. Also proposed a location for a emergency generator so that the building will have an emergency generator, but again, it will not be on the, will not take lanes, will not take site plan space. It will be hidden, be up on the roof, and hopefully we don't have to use it like we had here our last hearing.
You'll need it. Springfield, you'll need it.
And also shows a line of proposed screening so that it can be shielded, any equipment will be shielded from the outside. Sure.
Cycling exercise plan to the board engineer to review for any comments.
Recycling?
No.
What did you?
It's got to run once a week, like the timing of that.
Oh, sure.
Make sure that it's not intrusive to the neighbors.
Yes.
Good point, yeah.
For the generator.
Okay. So the best of my knowledge, I think we take you through the entire building, all the boards, and any questions, I'm here.
Did you discuss the basement?
Oh, you're right.
In the basement.
So is that 812 come out?
If he's got a board. If not, the basement plan was submitted to the board. I have it here if you need it.
Yes, provided there's no revisions.
Oh, you have it?
the date on that?
The date on this basement plan, is 4/10/04, and also 8/04.
All right, we'll just make it an exhibit, A12. Let's just err on caution, A12.
812 is the basement plan.
Okay, so the important part about the basement plan is that all utility equipment will be in here. The place for storage, aside from the other storage closets. The elevator equipment room will be down in here. Again, we'll have egress stairs, two means of egress to get out, and, but there will be no occupants there, strictly for mechanical equipment and storage.
And Mr. Mayfield, if I may, Mike Disco had pointed out that he would be opposed if there was a need for a new transformer, for that to be on the outside of the building. Is there room in the basement for that to be placed?
Yes, there is, plenty of room. Also, in terms of utilities, aside from the transformers, et cetera, the new building and the entire project, once it's designed, will all be fully sprinklered. Right now, there's no sprinklers in the building. The building will be fully sprinklered. That's the part that we've discussed that with the president of the congregation, so that'll be happening, which should just increase fire safety and just make the building a better place. Thank you.
Anything further, Counselor? No?
Just, Mr. Mayfield, with regard to the youth rooms, I just want you to put on the record, they are not being designed as classrooms because there is no school. Is that correct?
That's
Or
correct.
nursery school?
That's correct. That's why they're called youth rooms versus classrooms. Also, we did give the rabbi an office here. He doesn't have an office in the building. We thought this congregation, the rabbi deserves an office. That's also part of the first floor plan. Thank you.
I don't have any other questions for the architect.
Mr. Mastretta, you want to start with you first?
Just,
Because I know you did a tour of the building and
yeah, it's very helpful to do a tour of the building. Just one question, the rendering, the perspective that's been provided, can you just provide testimony that we have one angle of the building elevation towards the new entrance? Is what is represented on the board consistent for all building elevations as far as building materials, colors, et cetera?
Correct. They are labeled, on the elevation. The materials are labeled dark bronze, brick, Darnanic bronze. It's all labeled on the elevation drawings at the appropriate spaces. Thank you.
Thank you. And we would just ask for that, all of these exhibits that were entered tonight, if they're going to be submitted electronically?
We can do that.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
The highest point is really the top of the screening for the mechanical equipment is 34 feet. That's just, 34 feet. But that's, you don't even see that here. That you're looking there, that's about 32 feet. It's so tucked back, you won't even see it. But we just want to make sure, we spoke to the engineer, and he's providing for he told us to provide for a 6-foot fence. May not even have to go that high. We don't make sure that nothing ever appears above that.
Harris, anything?
Aaron?
Sorry. I do it to you all the time. I called Harris. I don't have anything. Do you have anything? Besides getting his name right?
Yeah, that's really getting to be an issue.
One of these days.
No, I think it looks great. Actually, assuming this gets approved soon, when do you think construction would start? And about how long do you think this whole build would take?
I think we'll have to ask the fundraising committee about that.
Okay, that's a fair question.
It'll be a while.
Okay.
Now, I guess realistically, to build this
Assuming it's
was
funded.
like approximately how long would it take to build the structure?
Obviously, after, we get the planning board approval, then we have to do all the detailed engineering drawings, have to go to building department approval and fire department approval. That's a process. And the actual construction, I would say, and they have to do it in phases, because the building, the synagogue is not closing down.
I was going to ask about that as well.
So they'll have to do it in phases. I say it's maybe a 3 to 4 year construction phase plan.
It could be less.
It could be.
We'll have to work through a pre-con to figure out, to make sure that we're cognizant to the neighbors, so during that process.
Just regarding the phasing, I'll just add to that, that obviously we have to do demolition of 2 houses. So those will come down, proper fencing, I know that's your thing, Rich Huber. Proper fencing will go around to ensure safety. Obviously, the playground will come down last if, when we're ready to go. But the existing building, no renovations, it's not gonna change until the new addition is built, so that then we move the congregation from the existing building to the new building, while then they do the renovations on the existing building.
And your 3-year timeframe is including that, correct? So it's,
Yes.
the outside work isn't necessarily 3 years.
No, we don't anticipate it would take 3 years to build the building. We don't know the start date yet, though.
Understood. That's all.
Marissa? Julie? Mr. Canagala? I just realized I forgot Mr. Disco. Anything? No? Okay, so we'll see you next week, or on
Well, not next week, but he'll be here on the
September
23rd.
23rd. We'll see you on September 23rd. Okay, this is your last witness?
Yes, at this point, I would like to call my planner, and that's Matthew Seckler from Stonefield Engineering. He is a licensed professional planner and professional engineer.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Could you please state your name again for the record, spell your last name?
Certainly. My name is Matthew Seckler. That's Seckler. I'm with Stonefield Engineering Design. Address is 92 Park Avenue in Rutherford, New Jersey.
Okay, Mr. Seckler, would you identify for the board your qualifications?
So I have a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering from Union College. I have a Master's in City and Regional Planning from Rutgers University. I am a licensed professional engineer and professional planner in the state. Been practicing in the field for over 15 years, been accepted before over 100 boards in both engineering and planning. On this project, I am the planner for the project.
And he's been before this board.
Yes, I have.
Okay, I don't see any concerns. Accept your qualifications.
So, Mr. Seckler, if you would please give the board the rationales and the justifications with regard to the variances that are being requested and the waivers.
Absolutely. I'm not going to rehash what you heard from all the previous witnesses tonight, but I will kind of go into the planning justifications. This is obviously the expansion of this synagogue. It is located in the S60 zone, which is a single-family zone, but this is a permitted use in this zone. That's why we're before this board and not the zoning board. It's important to note that because clearly the governing body has felt that houses of worship are appropriate in residential areas. They understand that there will be interaction between these type of uses, houses of worships and residential uses, because they allow them in the same zone. And they obviously recognize that having local residents be able to be near places of worship is important to them. So while this is a permitted use in the zoning ordinance does not specify separate regulations for houses of worship compared to single-family houses. So while if you're building a single-family house, designing a property for a single-family house, it's very different than if you're building it for a house of worship that's going to have gathering of people and events. The regulations, the zoning regulations, are exactly the same from a bulk standard. So even if you had a house of worship, a synagogue, and you were having your smallest possible prayer service, a minyan, 10 people, you'd have to have 10 spaces to park. That's not what you typically would see on a single-family lot. So some of the regulations, and you see this throughout the township, some of the regulations are really difficult or near impossible to meet when you're trying to build a house of worship to a single-family lot design standard. And you see that especially as it relates to building coverage and impervious coverage throughout the township. I mean, you can look at the various houses of worship up and down Springfield Avenue or Mountain Avenue, the Kingdom Hall Church, the Renaissance Church. You look up and down. These are places that clearly, and I haven't reviewed every single site from a survey and resolution standpoint, clearly they aren't meeting the 36% impervious coverage standard. They're most likely double that in many cases because they need to provide parking for all of those seats inside and all their attendees inside, which is again not what you typically see in a single-family house. So with that understanding, there are a couple of variances that we are seeking here that I think are pretty typical when it comes to this type of use in this zone. And two of them, building coverage and impervious coverage, you've heard considerable discussion about. And when looking at those standards, the impervious coverage and building coverage standard, you've seen that the building design itself has been designed specifically to accommodate this type of religious use. They're not being, they understand what their parishioners currently require in terms of having, and what they currently lack. They currently lack things like ADA bathroom, rabbi's office. They lack areas inside the building to have the youth inside. And that is something that they need to have as this congregation continues to not necessarily grow in terms of families, but as their families continue to grow. And I think that's important to understand that the building coverage that we've designed, and I'll get to the justification, has not been one that they are oversizing this property, or oversizing the building. In addition, they are being mindful to all of the setbacks. So while the building coverage is beyond what would be allowed if this was a single-family house, they are not creating any new setback variances to any of the adjoining properties. So they're building themselves within the proper area, and we're not seeking a height variance. So it's not like we're being an imposing property or going up in order to keep the building coverage lower and creating shadowing effects or creating a tunneling effect on any nearby property. So again, from a building coverage perspective, we are increasing compared to the existing site. But again, I think that you've seen the design, you've heard from the architect. It's been designed appropriately to serve this congregation in their current state. Impervious coverage, we've obviously gone back and forth, and we've even gone down from the initial proposal to what was, I think it was from 75.9 to 74%. We've dropped it, I guess, even more if you hear from tonight, with this new design, and then losing that last parking space, which it seems like the board is in agreement to. So we continue to work towards the impervious coverage requirement. Obviously, we're never getting to 36%. Really, no house of worship, I think, is getting to 36%, especially if you need to try to provide parking. That said, the impervious coverage, to offset that, is a stormwater system. That's the proper way to offset impervious coverage, and we've mitigated that additional impervious coverage through a stormwater system and stormwater design that obviously your board engineer will be reviewing and has been reviewing to ensure that we're mitigating and holding back and not just releasing water into the stormwater system. So we are mitigating that as part of the project. So again, there are a couple of other setbacks variances and other variances that kind of are pre-existing non-conforming conditions, just how the buildings currently align, even the building on the single-family lot that we're kind of leaving, that has some pre-existing non-conforming conditions, but really building coverage and impervious coverage, those are the two that are being triggered by new activities on this site. We also are obviously seeking a variance as it relates to loading zone. Clearly, this type of use is not one that gets a high amount of truck traffic or extensive loading activities. So again, we still believe that the single loading space is more than appropriate for a site like this, and that two loading spaces are not necessarily needed to operate this site in an efficient manner. We also have that parking variance, but we are improving that compared to the existing condition. You've heard how the applicant, again, is balancing with the board's help, trying to provide more parking on site. We are adding some new seats, but trying to get a little bit closer to compliance. But obviously, we're not paving the entire land or paving 3 miles around the temple in order to meet that parking requirement. I think we have an appropriate amount per the testimony that you've heard being provided. So again, those are the variances that we'd be keying in on. Now, this board obviously hears a lot of applications where C variances are being requested. But I want to emphasize the fact that as opposed to a restaurant that's seeking a parking variance or a residential house that may be seeking a setback variance, this application includes an inherently beneficial use. And that is what houses of worship are, and they've been specifically called out as inherently beneficial uses in the municipal land use law. Being an inherently beneficial use means that you automatically meet that positive criteria. And you guys hear all the time, we're balancing those positives and negatives. And that positive criteria automatically being met by being a house of worship. And that weighs heavy. When you do that balancing, that's a pretty heavy stone that we're putting on that positive criteria standpoint, because it's basically a protected use. Religious uses are protected uses, and really what boards should be looking at is, when you're balancing that positives and negatives, are there any substantial negative impacts? Not is there, you know, is there a little issue? Is there a substantial negative impact? And if there is, how do we mitigate that? How do we help and try to come up with ideas that mitigate it? Because that positive criteria is so heavy when you're weighing and performing that balance. And I think that throughout this application, and again, personally, I didn't think the original plans that were submitted had anything that was substantially negative, but I think there were some things such as, you know, lighting height, lighting direction, you know, things like impervious coverage that the applicant has basically gone through that process with this board, and the board has been active in that, in kind of dialing back some of those things that could be seen as negative impacts. And again, in my evaluation, I don't recognize any of those conditions, the building coverage, impervious coverage, the parking requirement that we have. I don't think any of them are reaching that, you know, this is a safety issue, a life safety issue that can outweigh that fact that we have an inherently beneficial use being proposed here. So again, just reminding the board, removed parking spaces as we've gone on to reduce that impervious coverage. We've reduced the light pole heights. The lights are being shielded. Different light fixtures are being proposed. Lot coverage, again, has continually gone down. We've worked with that outdoor terrace space and tried to shield it from the neighbors. We've relocated parking to specifically have them be at their closest to the one property that we control on Pitt Road. So again, we're being mindful and again, reducing that impact that any of these variances may have to the furthest extent possible. And again, that's what, when you have an inherently beneficial use, you're kind of creating that balancing effect between that positive use and those variances. So again, when I look at this application, I see one that the proper process has been followed by the applicant and the board to come up with the best plan. And I think that that's what we have here is the best plan for this property that allows this congregation to continue to flourish, to continue to serve their current membership by having these indoor areas, these indoor areas expanded, while still being mindful of the community. We also, again, moving the driveway further from the intersection, again, another positive improvement. We're improving the sidewalks along the frontage that need improvements. So it's not just the temple that is getting that positive impact, it's also the traveling public, the people around, by creating better safety at the intersection and the driveways themselves. So overall, I believe the variances that we are seeking can be granted. I believe that when you weigh those positives and negative criteria, clearly the positives are outweighing the negative in this case.
I have some follow-up. Okay, so you have very thoroughly covered the variances, which are lot coverage, impervious coverage, building coverage, parking variance, and loading space. There are waivers, and I want to make sure that we've hit them all. So with regard to the waivers, we've already gotten rid of the aisle width that existed in the existing parking lot, as was testified to by Danielle, our engineer. We've also gotten rid of the 16 parking spot needing landscaping issue that was also testified to. But there were, there's a few more. There was the waiver that has to do with driveways prohibited on both streets of corner lots, which of course this has been the case for 50 years.
And again, I think, you know, you've heard from the traffic engineer, and again, I think the one-way circulation on a site like this is actually beneficial than having kind of dead-end parking or the need for people to get in and out through the same driveway. I think here it works well, and I do think it would operate well in the future.
Okay, we also are seeking a minor subdivision with regard to 18 Pitt Road, with regard to the rear lot line, and I would like you to put on the record you know, the justification for the minor subdivision.
Yes, and again, we are obviously making those modifications, and we do have, you know, the waivers as it relates to what was called Lot B, which is that 18 Pitt Road property. And again, there is some pre-existing non-conforming issues with that property. It's 0.3 feet narrower than the allowable width, but again, that's an existing condition. And again, with that property, we are providing proper buffering between our property and that in terms of the fact that it has fencing, and it is a property that both that the temple owns, as well as the temple being the, I guess, busier use nearby, that it's been designed properly, has proper screening as it relates to the fence, and despite, you know, the nonconformities that are being created through the subdivision, we believe that site could still operate And again, it'll look the same from Pitt Road. If you're driving along, you'll know no different in terms of its rear yard or anything related to interior to the site.
And with regard to the pre-existing non-conforming conditions, we are not changing any of them, correct?
Correct. The building is where the building is on that road, and we're not changing its location. So look, if you drive by today or you drive by after post-approval, it'll look no different.
And the adjustment of that rear lot line in no way is creating any other type of a setback or variance, correct?
Correct.
And it's compliant in terms of the rear yard, is that correct?
Yes, it is. So the rear yard is not being impacted by this development despite that change in lot line.
Okay, we're also seeking consolidation of various of the lots, namely the existing lot that has the current synagogue, the lot next door that has the playground, and the two lots going down Mountain Avenue that are the single-family homes to be consolidated into one site. If you could please justify that for the board.
Yes, and again, I think that is a better planning practice is to have a single building all on one lot. Again, obviously, the lots range in terms of their depth, but again, I think as one cohesive development, having them as a singular lot is beneficial, and that is what's being proposed as part of the application.
So in terms of your testimony, is it accurate to reflect that with regard to everything that's been presented to the board, with regard to the positive, the negative, the justifications, et cetera, that this application, in fact, would not have a substantial impact of a negative nature, is that right?
Correct, and again, I think that's in concert with the board and the board's professionals, is that I do not believe there's a substantial negative impact with the variances that we're seeking.
And to go further to this, will this advance the purpose of municipal land use law?
It does, just on the basis of being inherently beneficial use, but clearly, if you run down those, list of what you're promoting as part of zoning, I clearly believe that we're promoting purpose A, which is health, safety, general welfare. Again, houses of worship fit that category, as well as having purpose I and J and H. All of those purposes are being advanced. I think the building, the visual environment is being improved as part of this project. I believe the circulation is being improved by adding additional parking and having the driveway be further from the signalized intersection. I do believe the site has been properly sited on this property, being mindful of all the setbacks.
So your testimony is indicating that there will not be a substantial detriment to the public good, that the benefits of the deviations will substantially outweigh any detriments. And lastly, the intent and purpose of the zone plan and zoning ordinance are going to be substantially, will not be substantially impaired, but will be promoted.
Correct, and again, I think that's looking at the master plan and the documents the township has prepared as part of their zoning ordinance. Clearly, having this type of use in residential areas is a goal or is permitted within the zoning ordinance, and again, we're continuing that here.
I have nothing further for the planner.
For the next, when you come back the next time, I want to get the exact calculations on the record for what's the lot cover, no, for the lot coverage.
Impervious coverage?
We have that now.
No,
Oh.
That's parking space
Oh,
loss.
with the parking space out, okay.
the engineer can do it.
No problem.
Mr. Mistretta, because you've spent,
That was my number one comment. If they could circulate an updated exhibit, there's a lot of testimony tonight. Taking out that one extra parking space is gonna further reduce impervious coverage. And that could be maybe redlined or put on, I think it's sheet 2 or 3 of your drawings. You have the bulk schedule there. And just update that information and circulate that as an exhibit, whatever we're up to.
you can bring up the engineer next meeting for 5 minutes, 5 seconds, and go through that.
It's fine. We'll do it.
Any testimony, any questions of the testimony? Mr. Disco?
I would just request more testimony on the lot coverage. It was, the response and the testimonies was couched in a drainage component, which is stormwater management, which I think was addressed. The lot coverage is also the visual coverage of non-natural materials. So I think there should be some testimony on the record.
Can you add a little bit?
Yeah, we definitely can. And again, the areas in which the impervious coverage is at its greatest is in the areas that are generally in the rear of the site. When you're driving by, most of the public will ever see is when they're driving by on Mountain or driving by on Shunpike, and what they're seeing is basically the building set back the way it is currently in compliance with landscaping free in the front of the area. So really, again, the area that would be more blacktop is the area in the rear of the site, which is really only seen by the members that will be going to the synagogue. And again, I think that through the landscaping design that has been presented, and again, even adding more landscaping or more green space through the loss of the additional parking space, it's not like we have a sea of asphalt either. And again, I think that goes to the fact we're no longer seeking the waiver as it relates to having continuous parking spaces without basically green space or breakup. And again, I think that is, from a visual standpoint, showing that there's not a negative impact with the seeking the variance for impervious coverage.
And in reality, there was nowhere else to put the new parking lot, was there?
Correct. It's balancing that parking variance we had with an impervious coverage variance. And, we, I guess, went a little high on the parking, a little low impervious, and now we're kind of balancing it out.
Anything further, Mr. Disco? Mr. Huber?
Nope, thought that was very thorough. Thank you.
The numbers, yeah. Well, that's next time. Richard? Julie? Brian? Nothing. So you're all set? That's all your testimony?
That's the testimony, yes.
So for the next meeting, everyone will be present, and I think that we just need your engineer to come up and give a little testimony on what the impervious coverage is, talk a little bit about the buffer, whatever trees you guys have come up with, in agreement with Mr. Disco, and then at that point, we'll open it up to the entire public to speak. So, from the public standpoint, this application will be carried to September 23rd, 2024. We do have one application in before this, but it'll take.
I'm the attorney on that, so I'll get through.
15, 20 minutes. It'll take 15, 20 minutes max. So the idea is that's going to be public night. Will be the option for every member of the public to take all the questions that they've come up with over the last 2 meetings, one in August and the one today, and ask every member of their expert team questions. If you have questions for Mr. Disco or Mr. Mistretta as well. What? We'll have to figure that out. We'll have to figure out what's the appropriate time limit and so forth, because, we want to make sure that you have an opportunity to speak, but, we have to be very pointed, so we're asking questions, so it's not, we give time for everyone to speak. So we're going to try to keep the meeting as long as we can next, on the 26th, that way everyone gets.
23rd.
23rd.
At 6:30.
At 6:30. So at this point, we're going to carry this application to September 23rd, 2024 at 6:30 PM with no further notice. Anyone that wishes to come to speak at that point in time. Perfect.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and the board and the professionals.
Yeah. At this point, I'm going to take this opportunity to open up a meeting for any other business that, any member of the public that wishes to speak. Anyone else? Seeing none, I'm going to close this portion to the public and request a motion to adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. Thank you.